Hey everyone, welcome to the Book by Book podcast. We're actually going to do things a little bit differently today. So at this point of the Bible story where we find ourselves in the Old Testament, often what we've seen week after week is just that the people of God find themselves in all sorts of mess. And actually there's a lot of chaos and the people are in exile and it's just a bit of a mess of a situation. What does God do? God is always faithful to his promises and he always brings his people back to himself and he's able to bring peace into the situation. So what we want to do today is just speak about a song that was written last year about the peace of God. So I hope you enjoy this conversation.
I walk in peace, for you are always with me. I am surrounded by your presence. I don't
So take yourself back in your minds to the spring of 2023 and a few of us were sat in a room at KCC worshipping and seeing what songs would come about, and this song in particular, Alex, I guess the first moment of inspiration came from a moment in worship from you. Talk us through what happened.
Yeah, we were just having like some space in our worship time as a team, and yeah, I just started humming this little tune, na, 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 na. And then I was like, oh, that's quite fun, that's quite nice. And I guess it came out of like a personal cry to God that I needed peace in that situation, in that kind of moment in my life. So yeah, just started singing out, I walk in peace, for you are always with me. I'm surrounded by your presence. And I guess I'd been mulling over the fact that when God's presence is somewhere, when it's there, you will have peace. Like, it's inevitable. Like, you can't have God's presence with you and not experience the peace of God. So for me, yeah, it was just kind of like a personal heart cry that I didn't know would kind of become a song.
When life is overwhelming, when fear and doubt drown out hope, I will look to Yahweh. You are where my help comes from.
When life is overwhelming, fear and doubt drown out hope, I will look to Yahweh, you're where my help comes from. I think there's something about wanting to start this song in a place of acknowledging circumstances can be really difficult. What do we do in those moments? The temptation can be that we become very inward focused, very looking at the problems themselves, but straight away, let's get our eyes and the eyes of everyone in this congregation onto God. He's where our help comes from. We can read all the self-help books in the world. We can try and do every good idea that we can come up with. There's something about, at the very start of this song, about peace in our lives. Let's make it God-focused. He's the one by whom we have, it's through Jesus that we have peace with God and we experience the peace of God. So I think there's something about wanting to get our attention onto him initially.
Yeah.
There's also something really cool, I don't know if you think this, but there was something about like the musical arrangement of this song where we didn't want it to be too like wishy-washy and the peace of God, and let's just make this really, I don't know, ethereal and spacey, and it's all about our feelings and like, but it's got a real it's just solid, and there's like a solid backbeat to it, and it's a tempo and a rhythm that just kind of, it grounds it in something that feels really solid and rooted, and almost just trying to reflect the fact that the peace of God comes from the fact that we're rooted in him and he's our solid ground. I don't know, maybe that's just me.
No, I don't think so. I think because, and it's not, I think sometimes those songs can work well, and there are songs that are like slower and they're very flowy, and that's fine, but actually as you say, it just nails that whole point of it's a declaration. So I think it's great.
Yeah, and I think one of the things in that first verse is like, it's when life is overwhelming, it's not if life is overwhelming. And I think it, as followers of Jesus, we are to expect life to be overwhelming at times. And it reminds me of Jesus when he says, I think it's John 16 somewhere, like, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And that's why we look to him. Like, we know life will be overwhelming, but in those times I will look to Jesus, because he is where my help comes from, because he's overcome the world.
Which is where that section of that song kind of lands in I will look to Jesus who's fighting battles for me. Actually, it's in Jesus that we have our hope. Yeah.
I also just think, like, people, how often, like, in conversations or just in the world today, that's how people talk about life. Like, oh, I'm just so overwhelmed. And I don't know, I can't really necessarily think of worship songs when that's how we would describe our own situation. We sometimes talk about, like, being overwhelmed by the love of God, and that's great, but actually it's a way that people would describe what they're going through, like, whatever it is. And so I feel like that is a way that really connects with where people are at. And when you sing that line, when life is overwhelming, for 10 different people that means 10 different things.
That's good.
But it's not also just like a generic.
We mentioned before that the chorus of this song came as a very spontaneous just moment in a time of worship where you started singing these lines out, and I'm interested to know, was it a supernatural, just God gave you some words and a tune at a moment, or did it feel like this was kind of coming from a life situation that you were walking in, or just unpack these lyrics for us?
Yeah, sure. So I think I was not going to come to the songwriting day with this chorus planned out. I think
I thought you were going to say I just wasn't going to come to the song.
I just wasn't going to come. No, I think like a few months before, peace was just a huge part of what God was doing, like what God was talking to me about in that season. And he was mostly talking to me through the story of Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego. Did I say those right?
Yeah, you nailed it.
And when they face King Nebuchadnezzar, and he says to them, "We're gonna throw you into the furnace because you won't serve the king," basically. And he was, and the three guys are just like, "Okay, whatever, throw us in. God's going to deliver us, but even if he doesn't, we will always serve God." And I think, when the three guys go into the furnace, the king's like, "Whoa, there are 4 people in there. We put 3 and there are 4 now, and one of them looks like a son of God." And for me, I think, life has been really difficult the past nearly 2 years, but God has been so faithful in standing with us in the fire. And like, he didn't take us out of the fire, but he's been with us. And I think that was kind of a moment of realization for me in that moment, that like, no, God hasn't delivered me, but that's okay because he's with me. And the whole fact that he's with me is enough for me. And it gives me the peace that I need. And so I think coming to the songwriting day, I was quite overwhelmed. I was going through a few things where I was just like, "God, I really need your peace." And so I think singing that out and talking about, walking in peace, it's not a kind of I sit in peace or all of this stuff. It's no, I go through the things that I go through in peace because God is with me. So yeah, that was kind of the story that had been inspiring me for like months. And so just to come and be like, here's a chorus of what that might sound like was
very cool. And actually the song takes you through, obviously songs often repeat a chorus a couple of times, and like earlier in the song, in just musical arrangement wise, you've got the first chorus is a bit more kind of reflective, and in the hope that actually the kind of lyrics of that can really shine through, and there's nothing getting in the way of them. But actually, as we've kind of referenced before, as you get through the song, there are some real kind of strengthening moments in these choruses where we want them to be a real declaration and a real we do walk in peace, and there is no need to fear. He's always with us. Like the constant thing throughout of wanting this to be so Godward focused.
If you're singing this in your own life, you're out and doing whatever you're doing, actually to be able to sing this and be like, or like just have that in your mind of I'm walking in peace, because like God's with me, I'm surrounded by his presence. Like, that's such a powerful thing to be able to sort of say as you are like in the moment of doing something.
And I think for us, when we were talking about the chorus, is we were kind of imagining a young person walking into school where they're, I don't know, being bullied, where or maybe they're walking back home where home just isn't fun right now. I think we were kind of imagining those kinds of scenarios and them saying, no, I walk in peace because God is with me, and like these things might not change, but God will stay he'll stay the same and he'll stay walking with me.
Yeah. And actually I think some of my favourite stories of this song have been, I was talking to one of the parents at Chuckles, big up Chuckles, that I am part of the Chuckles team, and one of the mums just came up to me asking just what was the song we sung on Sunday when we sung the song, and just saying that actually she'd encountered the peace of God in really tricky circumstances when things have been really rough. She just felt, as you're saying, just that present continuous sense of every day we can choose to walk in the peace that God gives us. I think that's so cool to know that actually God is at work in people's lives through this song.
Yeah.
Just sort of along that sort of lines of like that present tense, just something that Nick shared on Sunday that really stuck with me was he was talking about encountering God's presence, and it was like you can't, like when you're focused on the past you can't encounter God's presence, and you focus on the future you can't encounter God's presence. The only time you can is in the present.
Now,
It's good.
It's like, that's, and I think that song, like this song really reflects that, but just that sort of bit in his preach as well was just sort of really stuck with me.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely been stories that I've heard as well. So we recently went to like a young adults conference where we sang this song. We weren't really sure if we were going to do it because like we don't know how many people will know it, but I'd led through the song, kind of spoken to the fact that we walk in peace, all of the stuff that we've been talking about today, and afterwards this guy came up to me and he was just like, what was that song that you sung? I've been looking for it in Google for ages, I can't find it. And I was like, it's not there. Just wait, it'll be released soon. And he was just kind of talking to me. He wasn't a Christian. He came through like their CU from their uni, and he was saying, I've been really, I really don't want to become a Christian, but when you were speaking and when you were singing that song, I don't know what it was, but I felt so peaceful.
Cool.
And I, of course, just like, it's the Holy Spirit, it's the presence of God with you. But I don't know. I think there's something that God has put on the song that genuinely does release peace in the room.
Amazing.
Yeah.
The Lord of earth and heaven has called me out and sees me.
Even nailing down even further on the fact that the Lord of earth and heaven has called me out and sees me in what I'm going through. And actually we sung this song in a room with, it started with 10 people, sung this in environments with thousands of people, sung it on Sundays with hundreds of people, different conferences, and actually in whatever environment, congregation you find yourself in, you can sing that line and it's no more or less true, that actually God sees every individual, has called you out and sees you, leads you through the valley, and will never leave you or forsake you. And that's got some depth to it, some that makes you want to worship him and thank him for that, doesn't it? That whatever we're going through, whatever we're processing, and whatever season, the Lord of earth and heaven is so personal for all of us, isn't it?
I think it sort of ties in with what you mentioned it earlier, that idea of peace from God but also peace with God, and I remember that being a discussion when we were writing this, and actually why do we have peace? Like, yes, God gives us supernatural peace for situations, like it says that in the Bible, like peace beyond understanding, but also we have peace because we're made right with God through Jesus' sacrifice, and actually that's almost as powerful as, or if not more than, peace for a situation. And knowing that that line is just so powerful, like the Lord of like the God of the universe like sees me personally as
and I think it's quite difficult, isn't it, when you're in the middle of a tricky circumstance and you're like, just feel so unseen, I feel really alone. And I think this third verse really hits that point of like, no, you're not alone, you are not forsaken by God, and you are
not alone. That was the first draft.
That was and like the whole point is that you are in relationship with God, and that he loves you, and that he sees you, and that he does lead you through the valley, like it says in Psalm 23. Like, he walks with you through the darkest valley. And so, yeah, it's just a great reminder, isn't it?
Yeah.
As for me, I will know your
Sometimes in a song, you feel like you've got something, maybe a verse, chorus or something, but there's just still a little bit of something you're left to say, or something that's just a new musical idea, or something that just you want to bring out. Often that comes in, you might call a middle eight or a bridge or something. And in this song, I'm actually struggling to remember where that came from. So we've got, as for me, I will walk in peace. In my life, I will know your voice.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember where that came from. Can you?
Yeah, I can actually. Well, the phrase "as for me" came from Gemma. That, and it was we had done an exercise that morning, and it was basically I can't remember, someone was playing some keys in the background, and we all just read
all the Psalms.
Yeah. And it's basically just an opportunity to sort of go through the Psalms and see what God says to you, and just actually reading out a particular psalm.
It's all coming back.
And there was just, out of a whole psalm, there was a phrase, that phrase "as for me," that obviously really stuck with Gemma, and it was just like, again, that the bridge is just declaring sort of "as for me," like, I will know your peace. That's
And there's something of like the song we mentioned before about singing in the present tense and the power of that, and how like the start of the song, you almost start in what could be the past tense for some people, singing out the Lord of Earth and Heaven's called me out and sees me, and then taking that to the present tense, but then also just this moment here, taking it to the future, that actually I will walk in peace. I know for the rest of my life, for all my days, I will walk in the peace of God. I will know the voice of God. Something powerful, like almost prophetic, about saying, actually, this is my reality going forwards, to know God with me.
It's really like it's a really simple bridge. It's not there's not a lot to it, but it's just something that is just really powerful to you can sing over and over again, and it's such a good way of just getting, I don't know, we so often just need to declare truth and declare stuff that breaks through the lies that we believe, and this is such a good way of doing that.
And I think even going through, like, when we were going through the arrangement and like what is it going to sound like, my first note is that I don't know what it is with the chords in that bridge, but there's something that happens with the "as for me" and then the chord that goes with that. There's something goes on that you can expand on.
Alex, basically, when she writes songs, has little moments of musical genius that she doesn't really realise what she's doing. So we'll write something that's really cool, and you'll be like, "What did I do there?" Because that works really well. So just the melody against the chords of that just creates a bit of a dissonance that basically each chord represents a new dissonance between melody and chords that just works and sounds great, but creates a bit of a sense of it just constantly kind of drives it forwards and makes it feel like a super reflective moment of just actually pondering on the truth of, okay, as for me, I will know peace. But
that's what I wanted to say, but I just couldn't say it like that. But the second thing was, when we were going through it, I think at first we were just going to go from the bridge straight back to the chorus. And I think there was something that I was feeling in that I was like, no, can we have like a nice little instrumental in between? And I kind of wanted that to be a chance for people to just sing out, and for them to kind of say, you know, "As for me, I will know your peace," and say that in their own words. And I think, you know, when we sang it at New Day, I was just kind of screaming at the top of my lungs in that instrumental. And I listen back to it now and I'm like, it's so ironic that this song is called Peace, and
it's
I'm
the
just
least
screaming.
peaceful sounding thing I've ever heard.
But I think that is the whole point of the song, isn't it? It's the declaration. It's not the like wishy-washy thing that you were talking about earlier. It's It's being bold and strong in the Lord,
Mm.
and knowing that you will have peace.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
I think
that's my
like,
excuse for screaming.
but like musically, like something that comes up like when you start getting into like songwriting and arranging and all of these things is this idea of like tension and release, and that sort of is what that instrumental does.
Yeah.
That it's you go through this bridge and there's this instrumental section, and then when you like land in the chorus, there's this sense of like, it's sort of hard to explain, but like musically you're like, oh, it's like it's going somewhere, and then you get to the chorus and you're like like you just feel like you land,
Like you get home.
and then to be like to land and to be singing I Walk in Peace is just there's something like quite musically powerful about that sort of helps with like what you're singing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with all songwriting, I think we sit here as three people representing a larger team who worked on this song. Everyone as deserving as of credit, is even that's the right word, as anyone, but also like primarily any songs that come about or are written are all for God's glory. We're not trying to build anything of a name of any one songwriter or worship leader. Actually, we just want to serve our church congregation, and actually some of these songs just start with our own cries of worship. Actually, wherever they go after that is a bonus, because actually they express what we're feeling in worship at any one time. Thanks for listening. You've listened to little snippets of that song. If you want to listen to it in full, there's a link in the video description below, so go and have a listen. And we pray that this blesses you and helps you to worship and encounter and experience the peace of God in whatever you're going through this week.